Hey, you guys, it's Mo from Mo in the Deep End, and we are on week 3, day 9. So, what did we learn today? Well, today we learned that we didn't realize that the toxicology lady was not done with. Now, Mr. Yannetti did continue the cross with the toxicology lab, and I am not sure how skillful he was, but he did show that, again, the lab from the police lab did not take the sample, never touched the sample. There are different standards, there are different, protocols in place for both a hospital and then for a police crime lab. There was still talk about the whole blood and serum blood, conversion and measurements. And, just the variables in all of these calculations. Again, there is a range, there are variables, uh, you know, and that calculations for the retrograde sort of blood alcohol level could be thrown off if, the time that Karen last took a drink was not recorded properly. Now, the state has been going on, I believe, 12:45 a.m. So that is when the state claims that Karen Reed had her last drink. However, I don't believe the state lab or anyone has ever interviewed Karen or gotten any information as to whether she drank more when she went to John's home, which would throw off all of sort of the calculations. Now, Lolly did handle the toxicology person, uh, and basically, again, do I think the defense did a good job, but it's still very deeply technical information that I hope that the jury is taking notes on, because it does make it a little bit dense, and you have to be paying attention with the ranges and things like that. The next witness was Ryan Nagel. Now, Ryan Nagel was, 32 years old. He has the HVAC. He was there to pick up his sister Juliana on the 29th. Basically, he had been drinking with his ex, Heather, and his friend Ricky. Now, Ricky, I think, was the designated driver. So he was the one actually driving over to 34 Fairview. Does claim that he saw Karen's SUV. Nothing of concern, even to the point of he was asked, at the four-way stop, when Ricky let Karen go first, did you notice any erratic driving? Things like that. Uh, didn't say anything about that. He said that Karen's SUV was always in front of them, so they parked, on the driveway or near the driveway, and Karen's car was at least a car length or so ahead of him. Now we haven't no one was asked if Brian Higgins' Jeep was there, so that might be something for another witness. There was no talk about the Jeep. Uh, so, again, not that much. Now, Ryan Nagel does say that he did notice the brake lights and that the car moved up a bit, but he didn't know he didn't notice anything off with the brake light, i.e., was the tail light cracked? He wasn't paying attention. He didn't notice. So that kind of thing. For that particular witness. Now, there was a time when Julie came out and there was a talk for 3 to 5 minutes in which Julie talked while they had the car door open, and she was basically kind of between the car door, or the car door and the car body talking to them. Now, this would have put on the dome light in the truck, and obviously, if you are talking to your sister trying to figure out if you're going to this party or not, you're not gonna be paying attention to the black SUV. So, while no one in the car, to include Ryan Nagel and let's see, Ryan Nagel and, um, Heather, his, girlfriend, there wasn't any information. They didn't notice anyone get out of Karen's car. Now, they did all notice as they were driving past that Karen was the only one that they could see, and the dome light was on. Now, the dome light was on. They didn't say anything about seeing the car door open. So there are 2 possibilities. She could have turned on the dome light waiting for John to come back because she thought he was just saying hi, or John just shut the door, but generally when you shut the door, you know, the dome light goes off. But basically, they didn't see any of John. Now, it was snowy, but it was a light dusting. It wasn't accumulating yet. You could still see the grass. So this does call into question Jen McCabe's, absolute conviction that there were tire tracks that she noticed when she was looking out the front door. Now, that being said, I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Why won't the facts just line up with what I need them to? I'm sure is what, they're asking of themselves. But basically, they didn't know it. Now, the next person was uh, Heather Maxson. She was Ryan Nagel's ex. Again, basically said the same thing. She did not pay attention, wasn't paying attention, doesn't know what time they got there, does know that, Julie came out, but she wasn't paying attention or looking to see if John went in the house or not. And she did see Karen, as has been testified to, kind of hands here and the dome light on. Now, no one claims to have seen John outside the vehicle, on the ground, anywhere. But they do all notice the dome light, which, okay, that works just fine. Then you had Kate McLaughlin was called the female firefighter EMT, but it looks like they had gone out of order. So there was a fairly long delay in getting the witnesses switched out. There was some speculation, did she show up? What's going on? But it looks like they just called people in, the wrong sort of order. The next person up was Sarah Levinson. Now, she was in the home with Julie Bryan Jr. She was there to celebrate Bryan Jr.'s birthday party. She was one of the, younger people that was hanging out at the house, uh, and not. She's known Brian Albert for like Junior for 8 or 9 years. She went on to list, the adults that were there at the beginning of the night, which were Caitlin, Aunt Julie Nagel, and Brian's mom, and his aunt Jen and Matt. Now, there were several girls that showed up around 8 or 9 o'clock, but left before the older adults came back. Now they came over around 8 or 9 o'clock, left around 11:30. Now, what was funny is that Colin was not talked about until he was actually mentioned. It seemed like uh, Colin was kind of an afterthought, but she does state that Colin left before the girls left, so before that 11:30 time. I will have to go back and see if that matches up with the timeline the last time. Now, she then claims that, Brian Sr. and Brian Higgins showed up, and then Caitlin, Nicole, Jen, and Matt kind of all came up in a group. Now, from what Jen and what Lindsay have, said, basically Jen offered to take Juliana and Lindsay home so they could stay and continue to actually really celebrate the party because now this is when the celebration is actually starting with the whole family, I guess. So Jen was like, "Stay, I'll drive you home." Now, she remembers, Matt driving when they went to leave home. Now, it first came out in this trial or possibly in the last trial that Matt got all the way out to the car, realized he didn't have his jacket, left it in Fairview, went back and came back out. Now, according to Lindsay, as soon as everyone got in the car, she was in the rear passenger seat, so right behind Jen McCabe, and would have been, if you're going, along the street, would have been in the passenger seat closest to be able to see, not John or John. That being said, she said that kind of as soon as they got in, they were giggle laughing about Jen McCabe having some stale bread and peanut butter, in the back seat. So and I will give grace that, look, they weren't looking for anything, they didn't know anything had happened, so now this is where, Lindsay does claim that Juliana says something, but because of hearsay, she doesn't get into what she said. Now, Alan Jackson did the cross on this, fairly normal cross, asked how, she knew the Alberts and everything like that, and, asked if, she had been interviewed. When was she interviewed by law enforcement? And that wasn't until October 22nd or to October 2022. So there was a large gap in which she was not ever asked what happened that evening. And she was interviewed by Michael Proctor. Next, we get to Katie McLaughlin, the firefighter. This is a very crucial firefighter. This female firefighter is the one that uh, was, referenced in Jen McCabe's statement where I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Now, the female firefighter slash paramedic says she heard it 4 times. Now, Jen went from I hit him to I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And now we've got a fourth time. Now, she claims that when she heard this statement, she there was a police officer standing nearby, and the police officer turned around to the sergeant, I believe Sergeant Good, and said, "Hey, you need to hear this." Now, the problem with that is that it is not written in any reports. Now, the firefighter claimed that she didn't write it down on her glove because it wasn't part of sort of medical history demographics. Now, she does claim that she went back to paramedic Famonti and Nuttall and told them while they were in the ambulance. But that is different from, Nuttall saying that he was there doing the airbag when he heard it again. So at this point, Karen's either said it 7, 8, 9 times, and then we get so people are aware, according to what this firefighter is saying, that she's not a police detective, she's not an officer, so she you know, didn't, write it down in anything, but, it was important, and she made the statement that the officer, I think Officer Sharif was right there, and he turned over and said, "Sergeant Good, did you hear this?" That's what she alleges. Now, the big problem for, McLaughlin was that in the first trial, she sort of tried to distance herself from the Alberts. Now, in this trial, basically, she admitted to being in the same friend circle as uh, Caitlin, Albert. They have mutual friend circles. Apparently, their mutual friend circles are not exclusive and do include trips to the Cape, baby showers, different things, trips. Again, I would classify that as friendly and not acquaintance if you're going out of town on trips and things like that. I get that mutual friend groups could probably do baby showers, but it's those trips that I find a little iffy, in my opinion. But maybe that's because I don't have a lot of like friends. I don't know. That being said, Jackson did really hone in on the fact that during the first trial, there was not a lot of open transparency about how close she was with the Alberts. Now, Bev did her level best to try to keep any of the photos that were found on Facebook or, Instagram that proved that, this particular firefighter had a closer sort of relationship. Those were not allowed in. Not quite sure, not a legalologist, but it might be because she admitted to the relationship and didn't need to have them in to impeach her. I don't know. But I don't think she ended up looking very critical or very, very believable because of some of the things uh, that didn't add up or how she was not forthcoming. She definitely did have an attitude, and I can imagine that having your, professionalism, your integrity, questioned would be frustrating. But she had an RBF that was magical. She could work for the DMV, y'all. I'm just saying. And then we get to the most, well, annoying person of this case to me, at least for today, because we got into, oh, for the love of Cheetos, Paul Gallagher. Now, Paul Gallagher he started off in the Canton PD as a temporary permanent officer. We should have realized something was wrong with Canton when they have a position that is literally an oxymoron. That being said, he was an officer for 32 years. He was a lieutenant when he retired, did a lot of, not ATF, but DEA narcotics work, when he was in the temporary permanence of his officerness. He is the man responsible for figuring out that we should use snowblowers and solo cups because it was a blizzard, y'all, and we might not be able to drive our cop cars through the snow, so why not use. None of this makes sense. Let me take you on a journey. Mr. Gallagher decides when he gets the call that he needs to take his own personal tent because there's a dead body outside for dignity of the body. So he takes his personal car because, again, if you don't remember, there was like snowpocalypse with a Sharknado on the side. So he takes his personal vehicle because apparently cop cars, their kryptonite is snow. So they could not even get out there. Then he stopped at the Canton PD, got his gear, but didn't pick up any evidence collecting, paraphernalia because he had a job. Now, he decided, uh, when he got there to lock down the scene, let the officers know that they weren't gonna be going home at the end of their shift. They needed to get this scene locked down. Now, he claims that the scene was at the time that he first arrived, not a murder or suspected homicide scene. However, according to himself, he already had, several officers that had heard these fairly incriminating and damning statements. So it was both a a crime scene and not a crime scene, but he was going to protect it. Then, because he's in the middle of a blizzard, he decided the way to gently move snow would be to add more wind to it with a snowblower to gently excavate. Now, he didn't write any reports because that's not his job, but he did have one officer take a video of him on the phone while he was using said snowblower. Now, the curious thing about that video is it's not snowing. He also decided that the red Solo cups, again, it was too dangerous to, for the security of the scene to send an officer to Canton PD 3 to 5 minutes away, to get proper evidence retrieval and collection, supplies. But he was able to find red Solo cups, which are good at holding liquid. He looks with his eyes, and he, is just ingenious. We also went through the fact that he's never seen an evidence log for any of the evidence in this particular case. He knows that they have one, but he is not sure where it was. Now, according to him, the broken cocktail glass that he found and the blood that was found was taken to the temporary evidence room. The blood was placed in a refrigerator, and the glass was placed in a locked closet, but he doesn't have access to the temporary evidence or the evidence room because only one guy has access. Um, he took pictures, but he never saw with his own eyes where John O'Keefe was actually laying in the snow. So he's got it third hand by third hand by third hand because according to him, he learned from Sergeant Link where John O'Keefe approximately was, who learned it from from Officer Sheriff, who may or may not really know where this was. It looks like they allegedly took pictures, but not uh, diagrammed or anything as far as Mr. Gallagher knows. And we are still stuck on Cross. So I expect more fireworks. This man is a douche canoe. He seems to find himself very intelligent and ridiculous and competent when most of us think it's imbecilic to use a snowblower to try to look for evidence of a sensitive nature during a blizzard. And imbecilic that you wouldn't send an officer to go get proper, you know, evidence collectors for blood or presumed blood, but you had Solo cups, so that's just as fine. And you had a shop and save, craft paper bag. So again, just these are some of the facts from Canton. And buckle in, you guys, because he's still going to be on cross tomorrow. Hopefully, this breakdown gave you a little bit of information and you didn't have to sit through, just hours of people suddenly having defense amnesia. But thank you guys for sharing your day with me, letting me break this down for you, and letting me, be a source of Karen Reed knowledge for you, which is not as scary as it probably should be. That being said, thank you everyone for joining me. Remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, but have a sassy mouth and carry a can of bitch fire because there are people out there that think that his use of a snowblower was ingenious and not imbecilic. So protect thyself.